15 Golden Age stars whose private diaries unveiled dark secrets after their death. What if the glamorous legends of Hollywood's Golden Age had taken one last close-up, not on film, but on the pages of their own private diaries? What hidden addictions, forbidden affairs, or aching vulnerabilities would spill from those ink-blotted margins when the lock finally snapped open? Tonight, we turn those fragile pages together and discover the shocking truths that these icons took to their graves, only to have them revealed after the curtain fell on their final act. What makes number 3 on our list particularly jaw-dropping is that this beloved star systematically documented political activities that led to exile, creating a paper trail that would later confirm what the FBI had long suspected. But before we dive into Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below letting us know, and I'll read as many as I can after the show. The Golden Age of Hollywood created legends larger than life, stars whose carefully crafted public images were protected by powerful studios, manipulative publicists, and ironclad contracts. These weren't just actors, they were products, manufactured for public consumption and protected at all costs. What we've discovered in recent years, however, is that many of these stars were compulsive archivists behind closed doors. They didn't just live extraordinary lives, they documented them with surprising precision. Health metrics, financial transactions, professional jealousies, and forbidden loves, all captured in exacting detail in private journals never meant for public eyes. Today, these once sealed diaries have become some of the most valuable artifacts in film history. Discovered in estate sales, museum archives, and forgotten safe deposit boxes, they've rewritten our understanding of Hollywood's most iconic figures, not as cardboard cutouts, but as complex humans navigating fame in an era when image was everything and privacy was a luxury few could afford. Let's count down the 15 most eye-opening diary revelations from Hollywood's golden stars, each one peeling back another layer of the carefully constructed mythology that we've cherished for decades. 15. Richard Burton. If Elizabeth Taylor's diaries are jewelry-studded negotiations, Burton's are scotch-soaked literary confessionals. Published in full in 2012 by Yale University Press, Burton's 475,000-word chronicle has become one of the most unfiltered celebrity accounts ever released, spanning alcoholism, obsession, brilliance, and the emotional wreckage of love with Elizabeth. The journal reads like a novel. A 1966 scribble appraises their jewel collection at $5.5 million. A few lines later, Burton writes, "Regrets not to be pawned." He tallied every argument with Taylor. 25 major fights documented in vivid prose. One confrontation is followed by an entry noting champagne truce signed at 3:12 a.m., an account of kisses needed to secure peace. Burton was a compulsive statistician of the self. He charted his weight fluctuations, rugby match scores, and even the temperature of scotch. Optimal, slightly above wrist pulse, he notes. During a particularly grim March 1971 notation, psychiatrists have cited these pages for their clear indicators of narcissism and addiction. Literary scholars, however, praise them as a rare glimpse of modern Welsh prose, raw and volcanic. And for fans, it's the unvarnished account of Hollywood's most turbulent love affair, written by a man who knew his flaws yet couldn't escape them. Burton's final entry, dated just weeks before his death in 1984, reads, "The vodka is gone. The words remain. Both burn." It was perhaps the most honest epitaph the actor could have written for himself. 14. Judy Garland. For Judy Garland, the stage was both sanctuary and battlefield. When a tiny spiral-bound notebook dated 1967 surfaced at Julian's auctions in 2012, fans expected showbiz trivia. What they discovered instead was a 9-page pharmaceutical roadmap of survival. The first scrawl sets the tone: another opening, another dosage. The notes aren't poetic, they're diagnostic. Seconal, 12, Ritalin, 6, Dexedrine, 8. These weren't just pills, they were alarms, routines, lifelines. Garland cataloged them like choreography, each tablet timed to coincide with show cues, press calls, and moments when a smile had to look effortless. Her physical pain, mental exhaustion, and financial pressure turned every performance into an act of pure will. The notebook also contains a bitter anecdote about an aborted attempt to co-star in a film with daughter Liza Minnelli. "Studio wants insurance forms longer than my script," she jotted. Her career was now a liability. Yet, even amid despair, Garland's wit sparkles. One audience was rated swell, Clapton Key. These spare, sometimes heartbreaking notes lend credibility to biographer Gerald Clark's claim that Garland slept just 4 hours out of every 24 and lived in a medicated blur. When the notebook was previewed at auction, bids quickly surpassed $30,000, putting a price tag of about $3,300 on each handwritten line. The journal wasn't just memorabilia, it was a chronicle of resilience, a diary of dependence, and a final aria written not in song but in milligrams. 13. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh's on-screen elegance, immortalized in roles like Scarlett O'Hara and Blanche Dubois, belied a life painstakingly measured in margins. When the Victoria and Albert Museum acquired her extensive archive in 2013, they uncovered a treasure trove of 7,500 personal items, including letters, photographs, and most notably, journals dating from her teenage years until just days before her death in 1967. What surfaced was a portrait of a woman trying to maintain control in an increasingly chaotic world. Her journals document 22 manic episodes and 5 major depressive crashes. She often used coded symbols to track her mental state, later confirmed by medical records as consistent with what is now known as bipolar disorder. During the troubled filming of Elephant Walk, Leigh penned the chilling line, "Saw tigers today and tigers inside." She was eventually replaced by Elizabeth Taylor due to a breakdown. Another revealing facet of her psyche was her fixation with measurements. She scored each opening night performance from 1 to 10 on applause intensity and even calculated the acoustics of different theaters. Financially, she was just as exacting. A war bond record lists 54,220 pounds in personal purchases, roughly $2.4 million today, alongside monthly dividends, acting stipends, and donation receipts. A 1949 scribble dissecting Olivier's stage performance reads, "Hamlet's kiss, 68% stage, 32% mind." Her private calculations of intimacy blurred lines between performance and passion, underscoring how much of her real self was lost in roles others handed her. As public applause swelled, Vivien Leigh's voice became more statistical, more analytical, as if data could save her from emotional ruin. Behind the Oscar-winning glamour was a woman measuring her mental health by the volume of a standing ovation. 12. Ingrid Bergman. When Ingrid Bergman said, "A diary keeps the actress honest. The actress repays by lying to the diary," she was half joking. But the 7,000 pages stored at the Swedish Film Institute in Stockholm suggest she knew exactly what she was doing. In 2015, the acclaimed documentary Ingrid Bergman, in Her Own Words, drew from this cache, revealing a woman who chronicled her personal life as thoroughly as her scripts. A childhood declaration at age 12 reads, "I will be famous." Note this. By the time she was 30, she had starred in Casablanca, Gaslight, and Spellbound. But in 1947, the tone of her journal shifted dramatically. A secret letter to Italian director Roberto Rossellini, never mailed, but preserved and sealed, stated, "I burn to make films and children with you." A later page becomes a chemo journal, white blood cell counts, radiation schedules, all surrounded by delicate hand-drawn lilies labeled, "For Courage." Historians view these writings as those of a master tactician. Bergman wasn't just surviving the scandal, she was architecting her return. The diaries show a woman less concerned with fame than with legacy. She didn't just write about what happened, she measured it, weighed it, and ensured it added up. 11. Rock Hudson. The world first learned that Rock Hudson was dying of AIDS in July 1985, a moment that shocked not only Hollywood, but the American public. Yet his personal Paris journal, a collection of 56 handwritten pages smuggled home by a nurse after he collapsed at the Ritz, reveals that Hudson had known the truth for much longer and had been keeping detailed records of his decline. A stark opening line begins with laboratory cold detachment, T-cell count, 17, weight, 143 pounds, shame immeasurable. These weren't casual notes. The journal serves as a comprehensive account of medical symptoms, including pre-hospital drug regimens, reactions to experimental AZT treatments, and the emotional toll of hiding his illness. He even created a table comparing studio insurance payouts to potential career loss if he went public, a tragic calculation only a Hollywood insider could make. Margin notes speak volumes. "Call Doris Day. Voice will crack," reads one, referring to his longtime friend and co-star. A yellowed page documents a secret 1963 meeting with Ronald Reagan at a charity gala. "Ron smiled like he didn't know," Hudson wrote, suggesting the former actor and then politician had quietly distanced himself from the rumors that shadowed Hudson's personal life. 10. James Dean. James Dean's death at just 24 cemented his image as the ultimate rebel icon. But a 2023 estate auction changed that narrative, unveiling a deeply insecure, vulnerable young man struggling under the weight of his myth. Among 500 personal artifacts from the estate of his agent, Jane Deasy, was a 60-page handwritten journal, one that completely reframed Dean's legend. The most chilling illustration features a rough pencil sketch of his Porsche 550 Spyder, the car he would die in. Underneath it, the caption, "Speed is only borrowed." Throughout the journal, Dean kept a list titled, "Fears I Pretend Are Thrills," a tally that reached 92 by August 1955. These fears included abandonment, exposure, and irrelevance. He also maintained a brutal rejection inventory listing every role he didn't get, From Here to Eternity, Picnic, The Silver Chalice. For each, he scribbled a counter column, "I'll show them." That list grew longer than the rejection column. Film historians noted his fixation with quantifying everything. He recorded RPMs on his motorcycle, cigarette brand preferences per day, and even sorted categories of fan mail: musk, gardenia, tobacco. One candid and previously unknown revelation is a description of a 1954 tryst with a studio executive traded, as he put it, for a Buick and a promise. This single line shattered the image of Dean as a self-made outsider, revealing instead a young actor navigating the same power games that shaped so many careers in mid-century Hollywood. In a letter never mailed to choreographer Jack Simmons, Dean confessed, "The mask sticks tighter after every autograph." The diary was auctioned for $850,000, becoming one of the most expensive personal journals in film history. Rather than glorify rebellion, Dean's pages expose a young man calculating his legacy in advance, choking on the price of fame before he'd even finished paying for it. 9. Rita Hayworth. She was dubbed the Love Goddess. But Rita Hayworth's final years were marked by a slow fade, not into irrelevance, but into forgetfulness. In 2018, while cataloging items for auction, archivists discovered a thin, leather-bound journal hidden inside a false bottom makeup case. The contents stunned both historians and neurologists. A 23-year self-monitored chronicle of cognitive decline written by Hayworth herself from 1948 to 1971. Early jottings are upbeat, if particular. "Forgot the name of that columnist again. Must be the Scotch," she would note memory lapses as if recording wardrobe malfunctions. But by the early 1960s, entries took on a pattern. "Time to recall home address, 47 seconds," reads one. Another documents, "Words lost mid-sentence, 14. She routinely administered memory tests on herself, asking and answering questions like, "What was my first husband's middle name?" and scoring herself on accuracy and speed. Hayworth also kept what she called her vanity metrics, 31 body measurements taken weekly with notes like waist plus 0.4 centimeters, disaster, and thighs show filming stress. A 1968 notation describes a forgotten dance routine during rehearsal. Choreography gone. Blamed gin, not gin. Her final coherent entry in 1976 reads simply, "Rita Hayworth forgotten by Rita Hayworth, 100%. Her daughter Yasmin Aga Khan later revealed that the journal helped doctors identify the early onset Alzheimer's symptoms that had gone misdiagnosed for years as alcoholism. Today, the Rita Hayworth Galas for Alzheimer's Research have raised over $80 million. But more than money, Hayworth left a record few could have imagined. 8. Montgomery Clift. The legend of Montgomery Clift has long centered around his haunting performances and the car crash in 1956 that altered both his face and his fate. But in 2021, when his estate opened a long sealed box marked simply logs, what greeted researchers wasn't poetic longing or brooding reflections. It was a clinical archive of physical and emotional decline compiled by Clift himself with the discipline of a wartime medic. Each notation begins with a timestamp followed by detailed pain assessments. Left eye mobility, 38% of right, pain level, 8.4 at lunch, 9.2 by curtain. These weren't occasional observations, they were daily, sometimes hourly. The pages include diagrams of nerve damage and sketches of his own profile annotated with comments like tightness increasing, cheek droop visible. Even more painful was the section marked Roles Lost, 14 entries, each a major studio production, including On the Waterfront, which would go on to win Brando his Oscar. Clift's note beside it reads, "Offered, revoked. Face, not bankable." He calculated the income lost per rejection. The final tally, $722,800 in lost rolls, equivalent to over $6 million today. He also kept a running log of substance use with mathematical rigor. Each pill or drink had a column: milligrams, timing, and function, pain, sleep, social, etc. A December entry pairs a barbiturate with a scotch. 3:12 p.m., first sip. Feel better equals no. Feel human equals maybe. Tallied with heartbreaking precision. 7. Greta Garbo. Few sentences in any diary have caused such archival heartburn as Garbo's terse confession. Mercedes and I share a darkness no camera can catch. When the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia unsealed 87 of Garbo's personal letters in 2000, most addressed to playwright and poet Mercedes D'Acosta, the quiet, reclusive image of Hollywood's most mysterious star cracked open. Concealed in those correspondences were 181 coded pet names, many of which could only be deciphered through cross-referencing Garbo's own annotations with D'Acosta's memoirs. The collection contained 43 carefully preserved train ticket stubs between New York and secluded getaways, and receipts from 46 hotel stays booked under aliases. While the romance had long been speculated in Hollywood circles, the emotional and logistical evidence embedded in these letters gave scholars the closest thing to confirmation. But Garbo was more than a closeted romantic. She was a fanatical data keeper. Her notebooks, also found alongside the letters, included precise tables of her shooting day weight, blood pressure levels recorded during long production weeks, and even curious notations like audience size counted at premiere 742. A telling 1933 entry detailed her total studio fines, $15,300 when adjusted for inflation, accrued for refusing promotional interviews and public appearances. "Silence is cheaper than lawyers," she wrote, underlining the sentence twice. MGM, embarrassed and alarmed, allegedly offered a large sum to suppress publication of the letters, but the museum refused. 6. Betty Davis. Bette Davis never pulled punches on screen or on paper. In 2023, Sotheby's auctioned off her personal annotated shooting scripts and a cache of diary pages that revealed a mind sharp enough to slice glass. Among the revelations, a running scorecard of her legendary feud with Joan Crawford, penciled in the margins of "Whatever Happened to Baby Jane?" Davis, 1, Crawford, 0, appears in neat script beside an early rehearsal note. Below, she documents, "Joan wore ankle weights. Sabotage confirmed." Studio records later supported her claim that Crawford gained weight before scenes requiring Davis to drag her across the set, a petty but calculated power move. Davis documented 27 such incidents in total. But perhaps the most poignant line comes on May 10, 1977, the day Crawford died. On an otherwise blank page, Davis wrote, "The scoreboard breaks. Final tally uncertain." This from the woman who once said, "You should never say bad things about the dead. You should only say good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." Sotheby's valued the collection at $1.7 million, and it became the subject of numerous academic papers on women's power in mid-century Hollywood. Davis's diary isn't just a record of a rivalry. It's a battle plan, a medical file, and a business tally sheet rolled into one. Every underline and margin note reveals a mind fighting to stay in control in a town built on controlled illusions. 5. Joan Crawford. It was a sweltering afternoon in June 2024 when researchers at the Margaret Herrick Library sliced the string on a battered composition notebook marked in fading ink. JC, My Eyes Only. What followed was a media firestorm as the pages inside turned out to be a raw, obsessive, and often cruel record of Joan Crawford's private world, a sharp contrast to the studio-manufactured icon of maternal devotion and screen elegance. The notebook contained page after page of daily records, box office grosses written in red ink, calorie counts to the decimal point, and most sensationally, personal rankings of rival actresses. "Davis eats wrinkles," she wrote. "Stanwyck, 5 out of 10, needs lessons in rage." Crawford's disdain for her contemporaries wasn't limited to critique. She also kept tabs on what she perceived as backstabbing from industry insiders, listing names beside brief descriptions like "spills secrets to columnists" and "laughs too long at Bette's jokes." 17 pages focused on a secret affair with a 19-year-old co-star during the filming of Mildred Pierce. The entries included taped Polaroids, and stapled beneath them were wire transfer receipts, payments made, it seems, to keep the affair buried. Also among the pages was a fully drafted press release for her own funeral. It was complete with stage directions, lighting instructions, and the desired closing quote, "She died, as always, lit from the left." People magazine reported over 12 million views within 2 days of the diary's leak. Film historians saw it not as a takedown, but a deeper insight into an obsessively image-conscious woman who feared irrelevance more than infamy. Crawford's own journal showed a woman not just playing a part, but directing the scene, even in her darkest moments. 4. Marilyn Monroe. The breathless mystique of Marilyn Monroe still echoes in pop culture, but it's the hurried thoughts in her private notebooks that speak volumes louder. Published posthumously in the 2010 collection Fragments, these 169 diary entries and torn pieces of hotel stationery peeled away the peroxide veneer of Monroe's public persona, revealing the interior world of a woman swinging between artistic ambition, mental anguish, and desperate loneliness. A hasty note scrawled on Waldorf Astoria hotel paper reads, 32 press photographers outside at 6:17 a.m. Smile anyway. Another includes a sedative dosage calculation. 1.5 tablets 3 times a day, followed by a hand-drawn heart cracked down the middle. Monroe's handwriting often deteriorated in moments of emotional intensity. Graphologists later correlated this with her increasing dependence on barbiturates and erratic therapy sessions. The most unsettling discoveries were 9 unsent letters. One pleaded with Joe DiMaggio to please take me home. Another warned President John F. Kennedy, you risk history's pity if you forget your promises. But the most haunting was addressed to herself. Keep the light on. Monsters hate light. Forensic analysis revealed that her final entry, Fear is a Room Without Doors, was written fewer than 36 hours before her death in August 1962. Alongside the psychological turmoil, the diaries also contained biting social commentary. In one entry, she notes that Robert Mitchum made $175,000 for River of No Return, while she earned $100,000. Smile anyway, she wrote beside it, a oft-quoted line among biographers and feminist historians alike. The journals also confirmed that Monroe had been diagnosed with psychic mood swings, a term which today would fall under the umbrella of bipolar spectrum disorder. Her writings offer not just insight into the sex symbol's pain, but her deep self-awareness. I know I am fiction to them, she wrote, but I have to live in non-fiction. The world wanted a fantasy, and Marilyn gave it to them. But Norma Jean, the girl behind the glitter, was busy writing her truth in pen. 3. Charlie Chaplin. Behind the slapstick brilliance of The Little Tramp was a man who believed that comedy could be calculated. In 2019, the Vevey Museum in Switzerland opened a long-held collection of Charlie Chaplin's personal ledgers and diaries from 1915 to 1977. What scholars uncovered were notebooks filled with equations, stopwatch times, and precise diagrams of laughter, not jokes. Each sketch and scene from The Kid or The Immigrant had its own entry. Chaplin tracked laughs like an engineer, adjusting frame rates, beat pauses, and shot lengths according to audience response during test screenings. He even measured respiratory rhythms of audiences in silent theaters, recording in one instance collective intake before pratfall synchronized. Beyond comedy, Chaplin's notes reveal a deep political paranoia. He maintained a blacklist of names labeled probable informants, 14 in total. Later, FBI files confirmed 11 of them as real government operatives embedded in Hollywood's left-leaning circles. Most jaw-dropping were detailed records of meetings with suspected communist sympathizers, complete with coded language about funding channels and message distribution. While Chaplin always publicly denied communist affiliations, his private writings suggest a man deeply involved in leftist politics, not just as a sympathizer, but potentially as an active participant. In 1977, shortly before his death, Chaplin wrote one last entry, total laughter generated, approximately 1.89 trillion seconds. That's 60,000 years of joy if you do the math. Chaplin's journal proves what few suspected, that the king of physical comedy was also one of its most obsessive architects, and that his political activities went far deeper than even his critics imagined. Every banana peel, every stumble was executed not for chaos, but for precision, and perhaps for a revolution that never came. 2. Cary Grant. Cary Grant, the paragon of suave masculinity and on-screen composure, left behind not pages, but tapes. Hours of raw, vulnerable recordings made during more than 100 LSD-assisted psychotherapy sessions conducted between 1958 and 1961. In January 2024, these 17 hours of LSD session transcripts were unsealed from the archives of the Janssen Clinic, revealing Grant's voice, cracking through layers of repression, self-analysis, and psychedelic catharsis. I am the statue of my own studio publicity. Watch me melt, he begins in the first session. Grant discusses the trauma of his childhood, abandonment by his father, the institutionalization of his mother, whom he believed dead until adulthood, and the lifelong identity fragmentation that followed. In one moment of hallucinatory insight, he identifies 16 internal personalities, from the dancer to the tailor to the abandoned boy, and then jokingly adds, I let the confident one take Diane Cannon to dinner. His financial records for the sessions were exact. $150 per visit, billed to a Swiss account discreetly labeled self-reconstruction. Over the years, that totaled $15,000, over $150,000 in today's money. His real story wasn't written in lipstick and laughter. It was recorded between sobs and sighs into a microphone taped to his chest. Honorable mentions: Maureen O'Hara. The fiery redhead known as the Queen of Technicolor kept detailed records of Hollywood's casting couch culture, documenting not just who made advances, but the professional consequences of refusal. Personal letters and diary entries revealed in her 2016 biography detailed how O'Hara was blacklisted for years after refusing the sexual demands of a powerful producer. A 1945 notation reads, "Turned down J again. Lost Canyon Passage this morning. Connection obvious." She carefully counted 14 roles she believed were denied her due to rejected advances, with salary estimates totaling over $1.2 million in lost income. When O'Hara testified before Congress in 1957 about industry practices, she brought pages from these diaries as evidence, though the committee refused to enter them into the official record. The journal also contained 34 names of actresses who had confided similar experiences to O'Hara, creating what amounted to the first documented network of women supporting each other against studio system exploitation. Discovered among Gable's effects in 2018, a military service diary revealed that Hollywood's king had deliberately sought out dangerous combat missions following Carole Lombard's death in 1942. While his public image during World War II was carefully managed by the military to protect the star, his private writings tell a different story. Third request for frontline duty, denied again. They want newsreels, not obituaries, he wrote in June 1943. Gable counted every combat flight he managed to join. 5 bombing missions over Germany, each with casualty rates noted in the margins. One entry reads, "Return rate from today's target, 76%. Acceptable odds." Military historians now believe Gable was actively seeking what amounted to a form of suicide, with one notation reading, "If I die a hero, at least the story will have a proper ending." The diary completely reframes his wartime service from patriotic celebrity contribution to a grief-stricken man's quest for either redemption or release. Errol Flynn. The swashbuckling star's travel journals and financial records found in a 2019 estate sale documented a series of meetings with Nazi officials in the late 1930s that have puzzled historians ever since. Flynn, who was investigated for Nazi sympathies during World War II but never charged, appears to have maintained detailed accounts of these encounters. A 1938 notation records a meeting in Berlin with propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, noting, "G surprisingly well-versed in cinema, offered contracts, declined with excuses of Warner commitment, information gathered, see Appendix C." The cryptic nature of these entries has led some historians to suggest Flynn may have been gathering intelligence rather than showing sympathy, possibly for British interests. He documented transferring funds from German banks totaling 27,000 Reichsmarks shortly before the war began, with coded references to insurance for London friends. The diary has renewed debate about Flynn's true activities during this period, challenging both those who accused him of Nazi sympathies and those who dismissed the allegations entirely. 1. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor's Blue Room was legendary among those who worked closely with her, a vault-like suite in her Bel Air mansion. It was said to house her most personal treasures, jewelry, love letters, scripts, and, as revealed after her death in 2011, over 7,000 pages of private diary entries. In 2022, biographer Kate Anderson Brower was granted unprecedented access. What she found wasn't the musings of a diva, but the running log of a woman who kept granular records of a life lived both in public glare and private pain. The first entry from Cleopatra's tumultuous shoot reads, "Budget at $2 million already. Smells like disaster." By the end of filming, Taylor had tracked every major overrun, noting how the final cost ballooned to $44 million, a staggering amount for the time. In the margins, she doodled sketches of the Cartier diamond before she owned it, captioned "Someday," foretelling the world-famous gem Richard Burton would later give her. The volumes covered her 8 marriages with extraordinary precision. Richard Burton appears 1,392 times. Her final husband, Larry Fortensky, only 27. She charted arguments, reconciliations, and even jewelry appraisals next to emotional scores. Fight level, 6 out of 10. Recovery champagne equals Krug. 2 glasses. Her struggle with addiction is laid bare, too. Following her 1961 tracheotomy, Taylor recorded every Demerol injection with timestamps and pain ratings. One standout entry from 1985 details her personal efforts to raise funds for AIDS research. 17 calls, $47 million pledged, not counting Sinatra's check. Her advocacy wasn't abstract. She audited her own impact down to the dollar. The Diaries also delve into Hollywood inequality. A comparison chart contrasts her Cleopatra salary, $1 million, with Audrey Hepburn's My Fair Lady pay, $750,000. Next to it, she quips, "Sorry, Audrey, get a volcano," referencing Taylor's near-death experience filming in Italy. With wit, pain, and clarity, Taylor's diaries reveal her not just as a film icon, but as a shrewd negotiator, a self-aware addict, and a philanthropist who knew her power and its price. As the 1966 entry following her second Oscar win succinctly notes, value up. Leverage applied. Victory. So, what do we make of these once hidden pages? These diaries that whispered truths louder than any headline ever could? Behind every glamour shot was a tally of fears, passions, addictions, and desires, inked in private and never meant for the spotlight. And yet, here they are, giving us one final performance, not on screen, but between the lines. What's most striking isn't just the salacious details or unsettling confessions. It's the near-compulsive documentation. These weren't just emotional outpourings. They were systematic records, financial balance sheets, medical charts, and strategic plans. The stars we idolized weren't just living extraordinary lives. They were measuring them, analyzing them, trying to make sense of experiences few others could comprehend. In an era before smartphones and social media, they created their own private databases of life. The measurements vary. Garbo tallied her fines for avoiding publicity. Crawford inventoried her rivals' weaknesses. Chaplin calculated comedic timing to the millisecond, but the impulse was the same. In a world where so much was fabricated for public consumption, they needed something real, something quantifiable, even if that something was their own decline. These journals have become some of the most valuable artifacts in film history, not just for the gossip they contain, but for how they humanize these larger-than-life figures. They remind us that behind every perfectly lit close-up was a person taking notes, counting costs, and trying to maintain control in an industry designed to take it away. If these legends taught us anything, it's that fame may fade, but paper remembers. Which secret shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you love the stories Hollywood tried to bury, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more hidden histories from the golden age of cinema.